Welcome to the Loadout Podcast with Aaron Perlett.
Thanks for coming back to another edition of the Loadout Music Podcast. Today I'm actually joined by really one of my favorite musicians that I've seen a couple times as he tours through the Midwest. His name is Lincoln Durham, and last time he and I spoke, he describes his music as Southern Gothic Psycho Blues Revival Punk, which is easily said. But I'm thrilled to have on Lincoln Durham. Lincoln, thanks so much for being back with us being with us on the Loadout. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to be on. It comes at a good time because I'm stuck in this room all the time anyway. So why not?
I mean, strange times. I mean, how are you? How are you and your? I know you're married. I don't know if you have children, but I mean, how are you holding up?
Honestly, we're doing okay. We had to start a little. We started a little earlier than everybody else because Alyssa's got kind of that bad immune system thing, so we were a little extra careful. But honestly, we're probably taking it a lot better than we should be.
Yeah,
we're settling into hermetism pretty easily, but it's finally starting to weigh on us a bit. We're really kind of wanting some actual association with some people that's not via video in a box. So it's getting a little crazy. But she's been doing a bunch of gardening. Like we never had the time to do anything, because we were always touring 180 days a year for 10 years, and so we moved into this house about 5 years ago, and it's still just pretty much exactly the way we moved in, and so yeah, for the first time in 5 years of being here, and really the first time in about 10 years, we've been able to kind of nest a bit, so she's been doing a lot of gardening, a lot of just making the house kind of a home. So it's been it's bad times for sure, but we're making the best of what we've got, at least.
Yeah, I can only imagine, just because not only do you spend a lot of time on the road, but I know that she more often than not is with you on the road working your merch table. I know she's done some backup vocals on some of your music. It must be just such a dramatic shift from just your lifestyle in general.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was well, yes, it's polar opposite, really. We were never at home, always gone, and now, and we actually, it's really weird for me right now, because we had been going for so long, so hard, and at the end of last year, coming back from the UK, we had already decided that we were going to take a little time, like a few months off, like 2 or 3 months off, like kind of the holiday season, and then start back in the spring. And so we had already, in order just to kind of reset, I wanted to, woodshed a bit with my music, kind of get better at my craft again, because, when you're playing all the time, you're maintaining your level, but it's hard to I think, get better or flourish, because you're just doing the same thing, so you're not really, or at least me, I'm not really pushing myself too much outside of what I would normally do. So I wanted to, have some time to come home, to kind of regroup, to work on some new songs, work on new ways of doing some of what I do now. And so that's what we had started to do, starting in, November. And then this happened. So it's kind of, the hiatus has been, triple what I had planned for. So it's been a bit now. I was doing a lot of woodshedding, doing a lot of writing, doing a lot of recording. And I would go to I have a rehearsal studio that I rent space at, and go and do the full one-man band thing just to keep the chops up and everything. But that's, can't do that now, can't do any of it. So it's been weird. It's been really weird, but I am writing and recording, so that's great. I can still do that. But yeah, it's been way longer grounded than I thought it was, because, for those that worked right up until the quarantine, it's less time. I had built in this, time off that just happened to coincide right before all this. So for me, it's been a while now since I've been out. It's been November. So that's stark contrast. We were never more than a month off, or maybe at most 2 months off, and then we were back out for, a month or two. So it's really weird for me, and it's that part's weighing on me emotionally a bit, just because it's hard for me to be, inactive when it comes to getting out there. It's just who I am. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about for those that are watching or listening to this that maybe aren't familiar with you. I know you grew up I believe you grew up in Texas, and your first instrument was actually the fiddle. Because last time we chatted, we had talked about you winning the Texas Fiddle Champion at 10. But how did you get into music? Talk about, your introduction to music and what inspired you and drove you to get into playing.
Well, at first it was really young. So it was my dad and my grandfather. They wanted me to play fiddle, and I started that when I was 4. So I was really young, and you don't really play the fiddle at 4. It's almost like a little toy, little wooden toy, but I guess you kind of learn how to hold it, and kind of the bow on the strings is probably the hardest hurdle to overcome. So you're kind of learning that stuff, I guess, really basically. But by the age of 5 or 6, you're playing, and I started doing that, and I at about 8 or so, really young, I was playing in a country band that was, all the rest of them were 40, probably 30, 40 years old, and I was 8, 10, on up until I was 18 or so, I guess, playing the fiddle over on the side there, and mostly at a little place. It was like an opera house, what they call them here in Texas, and I guess maybe the South, I don't know, but it was like the third Thursday of every month or something, then all the people from around in the country would come to this old abandoned, well, it wasn't abandoned, I guess, but it was an old schoolhouse from like the turn of the century. And, it'd bring food and stuff. It was just very kind of old school, hoedown kind of a thing. And we would do that. And that's kind of what originally got me into music. From that point, that was something that was put into my hands, the fiddle. And so now I'm grateful for it. But at the time, that wasn't my decision. So, the music end of it stuck and took. But I wanted to do something different, and of course, it was guitar and sing. So, everyone else.
And I think I recall when we have spoken before, you told me that when you heard Nirvana play, it was really one of the influences that made you pick up the guitar and really shift course.
Exactly. I guess I never really know how to consider, like I'm a 90s kid. I lived through the 80s too, so I was a young 80s kid and a teenage 90s kid. So I would assume that made me a 90s kid. But anyway, my formidable years was in the 90s, and so Nirvana comes out. That was the big one that kind of was an eye opener for me. That style of music that was coming out at that time is what really made me think, man, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do that. And so that's what I did. That was, some of the first stuff I was doing on guitar was, Smashing Pumpkins and definitely Nirvana, Metallica back then. But that was the music. The 90s music was what really kind of made me want to do play the guitar and sing. And it's also what kind of gave me, I guess, the spirit of what I was going to eventually do. That, and I had a punk background too, because you mentioned I did grow up in Texas, but I always say I had dual citizenship between Texas and middle of nowhere Texas and middle of nowhere New Jersey, because my parents split when I was like one, so I bounced back and forth. So I had this kind of punk attitude vibe, that I liked, and then it was everything except but what I was doing pretty much. And so I decided I wanted to move to the center of the stage and start playing guitar. I still did the fiddle thing for a while. Then I put that up for a long time, which you always, I think most people always regret not sticking with the thing that they did when they were a kid. I'm glad I did what I did, but I wish I would have kept that up as well. I still play it now. I play it on a lot of my records, but I'd be way better if I would have, as I learned guitar and sang, would have kept playing the fiddle as well. But yeah, that's what started kind of transforming me into a aggressive little guitar player.
Yeah, and I think for anyone that's heard you play, seen one of your shows, I mean, you do have a very aggressive style, but I know you also have influences that you've talked about, like Nick Cave is a big influence on you, Tom Waits is a big influence on you, and it goes back to where we started, and that was when you first told me what your style was, that Southern Gothic psycho blues revival punk. It kind of brings in all of those influences. I mean, you hear them melded into how you play, and you have this kind of ferocious style of playing as well.
Yeah, it is what the reason I came up with that description is because what I would do is so many people would always ask that the people that would connect with it would wonder, well, what do I call this? I like it. What is it? What do I ask for? What am I listening to? And I didn't honestly know either, because I couldn't. I realized later that is kind of, I guess, a benefit, because it means that maybe you're doing something novel or unique. But at the time, I would have gladly tried to stick it into something, but I honestly didn't know either. So I'd say, well, what do you think it is? And they'd say, well, I think it's kind of like this. And then I would just keep mashing those descriptions, together to get, kind of what I had come up with. But it is, I think, a melding. It's basically, it's all of the people that I love put through my filter, because I seem to only be able to whenever I write, they always come out just a certain way, which is kind of, I guess, me. But it's all of the elements of people that I love. And then once you mash that together and filter it through pretty much, like, I guess, the only thing I know how to do, then it comes out me, which is probably the way it is for most musicians, I guess.
Well, and I think also what's interesting for those who haven't seen you live is that you're a one-man band. I mean, you're playing the drums, you're playing sometimes some very unique guitars. You typically have a couple different microphones, one of which has some distortion on it. It's kind of this show in a box that's just you. And you told me last time we chatted that you said you want to make sure you're striving to make sure that just you sounds like an entire band and build that fullness of a sound. And it seems like it's a very important thing to you as you create and create your art and perform your art.
It is. That's probably equal for me to the craft of the music and the lyrics, which is very important to me. But the presentation of the one man band is second to the music for me, because I have always wanted to know how big without loops and things, and that's fine. Loops, if people want to use that in stacking music, I don't have anything against that. But just my personal goal was to see how much analog noise, not, or amperage I could make, and still have pockets, still have places, not just here's everything at once, but still try to have it all sitting at good areas in the song. I've always wanted to see how big, one person could do it, only utilizing the analog basically around them. So like when you hit this, that's the noise that's being made, kind of a vibe, and yeah, that's, and I tinker all the time. I go into that rehearsal space, and I sometimes, usually that's to rehearse for some shows, rehearse a new song, rehearse a new set. But sometimes I'll go in, for days and just be making noise, not ever even playing a song, just listening to the tones, trying to get everything to sit right, but still be as big as possible. So it's very important to me.
The other thing I was really surprised about last time we spoke about your music was that with all the different instrumentation that you're doing just alone, I asked you what you consider yourself first and foremost, guitar player, harmonica player, drummer, and you said, I consider myself a vocalist. And I was surprised just with your background in musicianship from being, from age 4, as you were talking about earlier, that, and you hear it when you listen to you sing, clearly. I mean, your vocal chops are pretty remarkable. But I was very surprised that is kind of where you see yourself first and foremost.
Yeah, I think it's a confidence level. That's the only aspect that I feel fully capable in. I think everything else I'm always trying to prove that I'm good at this or that, to some nebulous person or entity or myself maybe. But vocals are the only one that I don't feel like. I feel like, no, I'm pretty good at that. But everything else, I'm always questioning myself.
I can certainly relate, since I'm remarkably unremarkable at pretty much everything. And then when you step into music, both vocally and on guitar, I'm about as average as it comes. So I think there's a natural. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we all have this natural insecurity that we want people to hear us, see us do our craft, and enjoy it. And we're always thinking to ourselves, "Wow, I didn't hit that note right." It's always thinking about them.
Hold on, sorry. Come on, go, scoot. Sorry, I gave the dog one strike to. Okay, sorry, go ahead with what you're saying.
No, I think that there's, for anyone who's trying to create art, it's easy just to say, yeah, fuck you, I don't care what you think about my art. But I think most of us have a natural insecurity that we want people to like that art. We want people to appreciate it. For people who make a career out of it, you want people to buy that art. And so you're always thinking about the mistakes you made as opposed to the successes you have.
I've seen countless interviews with with musicians that have made it all the way to the top, and many of my heroes have said the very same thing, that they still don't. They still are wrecked with a lack of self-confidence. So I always assumed that one day maybe you get to a point where that's not an issue. But according to all of the people that I consider to be greats, all of the people that most of the world consider to be greats, most of them I've, at one point or another read some situation where they say the exact same thing, that it never goes away. The self-doubt never goes away, which is insane to think about. But then when you think about, wherever you're at in your trajectory, you still feel just as, or at least I do. I feel just as I question myself just as much as when I first started. So I guess it never goes away. But I think that's what makes great artists. I think a lot of people that go in with that just exude confidence and say, you know, you're gonna like this or fuck you. You know, what is motivating you at that point? You know, if you do churn out trash and you still think it's great, then you know your filtering process isn't doing its job, I guess.
So basically what you're saying is that I can take solace in knowing that Steve Earle feels as shitty as I do at times about his craft.
So yeah, according to everything I've read, yeah. All of the people that I hold dear, they all are like, I don't know, is this good?
Okay, good. You know what? You helped me. This has been therapeutic for me.
I think it is. I think it's true. We never get over it. We never get over it. I mean, God, you know, Mozart, you know, and Van Gogh. I mean, geez, they thought they were hacks when they died.
I thought about cutting off my ear, so it's I've thought very deeply about cutting off an ear.
Yeah,
So
I can relate to what you had going for sure.
So I want to talk about a little bit about what you write about. My favorite song that you do is a song called "Trucker's Love Song" that you, for some reason, never play whenever I see you, and it really pisses me off. And even last time I saw you, you asked the crowd for what song they wanted to hear, and I couldn't bring myself to yell out because I didn't want to be that douchebag. Yeah. But you've told me before that you write a lot about the things in your life, and one of the things you told me you write a lot about is mental illness.
Yes.
And so, you know, I wanted to explore some of that. Maybe there's some songs in particular you could point to that are personally meaningful for you, but I just wanted to explore that a little bit with you and just let you kind of riff a little bit about why that's important and why you write so much about that.
Yeah, that's a good segue from Van Gogh.
It is.
Into mental illness. Yeah, so for a long time, and I guess still, well, no, definitely still, even more so today, I guess. But I've never been good at writing a song to. Today, I want to write a love song, you know, and so that's what I do. I've never been that way. The only way I'm able to write is kind of as therapy for whatever I'm going through. Which for me a lot of times is mental, you know, problems, and so for so long I couldn't afford, you know, seeing anyone or anything like that, and so the only thing that would really give me like a relief was to expel whatever was ailing me in the version of a song, you know. So it was kind of like taking the pain or the whatever it was that was boiling up or pressuring inside me, you know, it put it in like a little bullet, you know, in the form of lyrics or a song, you know, and using that as kind of ammunition against what was ailing me. And so that's what I think 90% of what my songs are, is me trying to get through a particular situation at a particular time. Or if I'm pissed about something, you know, overwhelmingly, I will, you know, write a song. I'm trying to think of some good examples. Actually, let me just bring up my my music, because I honestly can't remember it. I never can remember any of my songs when it comes time to remember them. Except for
remembering not to play Trucker's Love Song. So that's...
Except for remembering not to play Trucker's Love Song. That's true. Yes, well, I mean, like, the early stuff, like, stuff from the Shovel was kind of more about my upbringing. So that was a little bit less trying to make it through some certain times, but it was a little bit more about my upbringing. You know, like Living This Hard was definitely about you know, just being out in the country in Itasca, Texas, you know, around my grandparents and a farm kind of a thing. But songs like Mama, that's a bleeding one for me. That one was really that one was a difficult one to write. Sinner was about me just feeling. I'm not a. People think I'm a religious person. I'm not a religious person, but I grew up around that, and that was a lot about people trying to. Well, the whole Exodus album was me saying, "Can you cuss on these things?"
Yeah, I mean, that's what. Yeah.
Well, I do it all the time accidentally. So, but I can filter. But me saying, basically, fuck you to all the people that were trying to. I had a lot of people early in my career that were trying to tear me down and trying to keep me from succeeding, and that entire album was kind of a rage fuck you album to those people.
Let me ask you, just to go back a second. When you said, "Can you cut some of these things?" What do you want cut out? Just.
Oh no, I was just saying, can I cuss?
Oh, yeah. Please.
I don't need to, but I will filter myself if I don't need to. But then the next one, so Revelations of a Mind Unraveling. That's when it starts to get. So the second one was kind of a pissy, fuck you record. The third one was definitely kind of me at a bad mental time, and the mental stuff is mostly just like you were asking. What it's for me, it's primarily OCD. I suffer from OCD really, really bad, like debilitatingly. It affects my regular life. It affects my music for sure. It attacks things like always this insane. This is one of the minor things, but this insane obsession of or fear, a terror of losing my voice on the road. Things like that. But the OCD I've had since I was a kid, and it was very Howard Hughes-ish. Where it had gotten to where I couldn't get out of the house. I couldn't be out among people, and then it's always kind of reared its head and subsided and back and forth for my entire life. And
what do you think drove that? Was it more? You talked about how your parents split when you were one. You were spending a lot of time with your grandparents. Was it a feeling of instability, and you felt the need to you had to have order around you, and that drove the OCD?
Well, that's probably a big part of it. Yeah. A lot of my upbringing instilling things, in me that really imparting opinions on me, young that kind of drove the way I viewed things and would, activate my OCD. It was, I always had this underlying, and not by any parental pressure or anything that I know of, but I always needed to be perfect at everything I did. And so I it was an agony for me constantly to. I remember when I was a kid, I used to, I no matter what it was, I would ruin it, take all the fun out of it, because I would just, if it was playing the guitar, I'd have to get it perfect before I could quit. So much so that I would just be, in tears after hours of playing. Just all I wanted to do was be able to stop, but I couldn't stop because it had to be, the last one I did had to be perfect, and it never was, Or we'd be throwing the football as a kid. I wanted to be a quarterback, and I would throw the football against a fence for 5 hours, just begging myself to be able to walk away from it. And I couldn't because, I had to get like so many perfect before I could walk away. Or, it was things like that. And it was agony. And it rears its head constantly, more so now recently. And so that's what this entire album was not. Revelations of a Mind Unraveling. That was not written under a healthy environment at all. It's me essentially kind of trying to expel the demons that are bothering me, is what all my music is. Save for a couple, like for instance Truckers is about my dad who was always a trucker, and that was one of the first. That was an early song I wrote. very much more kind of a Americana country style, and that one's pretty much just very simply about my dad and my relationship with him as a child. So a lot of them are deep. Most of them are deeper and trying to tap into something more visceral or more, I find that to be the case too with a lot of my fans. They come up to me, which is great. They come up to me really understanding or connecting with what I'm saying because they're going through something at the same time, and their music, which I find always, I'm so happy for that. I do always find that weird because my music doesn't, when I look at my repertoire, I don't view it as something that would help someone. I view it as something that might push someone over the edge if they're already standing on it. But I get that, constantly about it. I was going through something, and they'll describe what it was, and essentially, it usually a lot of times boils down to very similar to what the song was about, but you would, I don't think, ever know that from hearing it, but there's something that seems to connect with those that are, it's like the misfit toys kind of a thing, it's like it just seems to draw those that are going through a very similar thing.
Yeah, I mean, even, now that I think about it and telling me your father was a trucker and listening, that song is very much around that kind of isolated lifestyle where you're getting your social interaction on the CB and talking about the weather, and just going from town to town. So now that you kind of lay it out, it definitely get a sense for where it comes from.
Yeah, some of the first songs I ever learned on the guitar, my dad taught me, and they were Willie songs because he was a big Willie Nelson fan, and so that's why it references that, as well. So, yeah, that one's very derivative. That one's it's not really masking or hiding or doing it poetically. That one's just pretty black and white. But yeah, they're all in some certain way, for the most part, just trying to get through certain times. My opinion doesn't matter for anything, but I've always been of the, and especially with art, everyone's got their own opinion about it. But my opinion when it comes to songwriting is, if it's not birthed out of pain or necessity, then don't, it's then maybe it's not worth it. Like the people that write the hits, I mean, I don't think this is an unpopular opinion, but the people that write the hits, they know the machine and they know what drives, they know what topics to hit, they know what feelings to hit to make a hit song, and that makes millions of dollars for a lot of people. I don't believe in it though. I think that music and all art, should be created from conflict or pain or misery, because that's what I think true art is.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of, you look at paintings, you look at all the kinds of art that you can do, and there's not a lot there's not a lot of greats, masterpieces that was created by someone that was just having a hunky-dory time in their life,
Of course, thinking of the greats, bands like Atomic Junk Shot with their song "If She Smokes, She Pokes." Clearly that's one that the people in LA, the record executives, knew that if she smokes, she pokes. Get the reference. I feel you. I definitely feel you.
Yeah, go ahead.
What talk about this a little bit. When you seem like one of those guys that your craft is your life. That making art through music is your heart and soul and being. But I know professionally you've done other things. You're a graphic designer. What do you do when you're not on the road? You mentioned your wife had been spending a lot of time gardening. Is it just all music all the time? Is that how you're wired? Or are
you trying to draw me out into something?
I just want to know, is there more to you than sitting behind a drum kit with a guitar in your hand and maybe a harmonica strapped to your neck and a couple of microphones around you?
I feel like you're trying to draw me out into claiming something. But So I've always actually tried to keep this very separate from each other, but but I'm of the age now who cares, and also more people are finding it out. But so when I'm not on tour, I am a freelance illustrator. So meaning I don't have work waiting for me, but occasionally a project will come in, and I'll do that, and it usually just, I mean, for 10 years, it just so happens to every time coincide with when I'm not touring, thankfully. So I haven't had to turn anything down. But my biggest claim to fame, and this is a source of irritation to me, that when I die, I think the more out of all the music I tried to create, and all the people I tried to touch with my music and lyrics and the craft of what I do, I will be better known for the fact that I illustrate Chester Cheetah.
Yes. Yes.
And that is, I think, what you were trying to pull out of me, and it is true. So when I'm at home, and I do other stuff, but it's just kind of random illustration stuff that people will like an ad agency might need from me, a logo or something, But the biggest one is I do now. People ask me the main ones that you see when you like the main flavors that have been around for a long time. Those are not me, because those were done in like the 80s or 90s, and they're still around. But anything new, any new flavor that are not the crunchy, flaming hot ones or whatever, are all me.
I believe there was a mac and cheese one, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they're all me, except those original 2 or 3 that you see the most of, because, like I said, they've been around for a long time. But yeah, I've been doing it for like 15 years.
Well, look,
Mr. Cheetah.
So when someone Googles my name, the first thing they find is me doing interviews about mustaches on ESPN. So
Oh well, hopefully, surely they don't. If they Google my name, I hope Chester doesn't come up.
Well, that's the nice thing about being a graphic designer. You're kind of creating the art in the background. So, but that is not a bad claim to fame. I got bad news for you.
It's just when you try so hard for so long musically, and that damn cat is going to be what you're best known for.
I don't know. There's old time advertising executives that sit in front of pianos. They're like, "Hey, let me sing you this song I created for McDonald's back in 1972." I mean, that's their legacy. People are dying for what you've got, and you're like, nah, you know what? Don't draw me out. I don't want to talk about creating a Chester Cheetah. And
I know what it is, though. I always felt like, because I do take you, like you said, you prefaced it with I take it very seriously, my music, and I always felt like, I think early on, and now, like I said, I've been doing this for, I've been a musician for, I have no idea how long, it's 25, 30 years, but doing this thing, like really going at it hard for I guess 11 or 12 years now. I think for so long early, I felt like it made what I was doing musically disingenuous if you had like another way of making money, which is a dumb thing to think, but that's, I think, what early on it was kind of that, well, if you're doing this stuff, then you're not really a serious musician, right? But now, after, like I said, once you tour, 180 days a year for 10 years, then I'm like, all right, I'm a legitimate musician. I don't need to hide the fact that I can also, do some other stuff too.
Well, and it does seem, first time I saw you play, one of the great things that you do after all your shows, you actually come out and you talk to the people that paid money to come see you, which I think is, a very generous thing to do. And I remember the first time I saw you, I think there was maybe 50 people in the room, and my wife came up to you and said, someone as talented as you should not be playing for 50 people. I'm sorry. And she apologized to you. But then the next time I saw you, it was actually in the same room, and there was about 150 people there. It seems like all this touring and producing records, it's starting to create a dent in your your reputation is growing, and it seems like you're building a larger fan base. Do you feel that? I know it's not something you want to say, but I mean, do you feel?
I do. It's encouraging to see when, that's kind of, I think that always the measure is if your fan base is whatever the angle of the trajectory is. But if it's going up, slow or fast, you're doing something right. It's only when each time you come back, you're getting fewer and fewer that you have to kind of analyze or reevaluate what you're doing, and think, well, maybe why I'm not connecting anymore. Why? And so, anytime you see a consistent growing in numbers each time that you visit a place, then that's always it's that you're connecting, and it makes you feel like, okay, well then if I can just get in front of more people, then I'll connect with them. It makes you realize you do have a fan base, because I think a lot of artists, especially when they're starting out, some probably think that they're the greatest and they're just waiting to be seen. But I think for the most part, most people are wondering if there's an audience for what you're doing. And then the more people that come out and say, wow, this is, it's really great what you're doing, then you start realizing, okay, so there are people out there that will like what I do. Now I just got to go find them.
Yeah, and some of that tends to be built on actually being an opening act. Like, I know you've opened for Reverend Horton Heat, who's been around forever and has a very hardcore following. And I know that Sturgill Simpson had fantastic Negrito of all acts, which is they're amazing if you've never seen them. Had fantastic Negrito, which is about as far from Sturgill's sound as you can get, opening for him on one of his tours a couple years ago, and that and his appearance on NPR really kind of propelled them. So I mean that can be a huge aspect of building audience, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's my favorite thing to do, to be honest. You have to eventually do headline shows, but yeah, I favor opening so much more, because a lot of your fans come out still, but you get in front of a whole new group of people, and it's just exhilarating. There's a different feel for me when, for one, it's less pressure, but two, it's really fun to go out in front of a bunch of people that if you're pretty confident in what you're doing. And at this point, I do have a lot of confidence issues, but once I'm there and I'm out there, I feel like, I kind of, when I walk out, I'm more like, watch this. And so, that's a fun scenario to be in, is in front of a group of people, most of which have no idea what you're doing, most of which have not much of a expectation when it comes to the opener. And then, you get to kind of just be like, okay, watch this, you're along for the ride now. And that's a fun experience. Whereas headlining is that's the pinnacle of what you're trying to do. And then it's all people that came to see you. It's all rabid fans, or hopefully rabid fans, but at least fans. And that's really the ultimate goal, is what it's all about. But there's also that they know what you're doing, they know who you are. Even though they're excited to see you, it's going to be harder to knock them over, because they already know that you play an axe, or that you're a one-man band, or that you do this or that.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just fun to get in front of a bunch of unassuming newbies that have no idea what I do, and then just try to kick them in the face.
Which you do, and of course, I think you certainly need to have Atomic Junk Shot opening your shows, but that's a different topic for a different conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Whoever those guys are.
I know. They sound amazing.
So, what's presuming that we emerge from hibernation in June or July, what's next for you? I imagine you're spending a lot of time writing, refining now. When are you back on the road? When should we expect you to be thinking about dropping new music?
Well, I've got I'm currently writing 2 records that I don't know exactly how I'm going to put them out. If I'm going to put them out at the same time or one closely after another. But one of them's the main one is is on par with what I've been doing, and actually a little bit of not a little bit, quite a bit of old me pulled into it. So like Shovel era. So kind of kept the aggression, kept the evil, but kind of took it back a little bit to what I was originally doing. A little more acoustic driven, a little swampier, bluesy driven. But then the other one is like basically it's very piano driven, very ballady and slow and sparse. And rather than so I did a couple like a little EP of a couple live songs where I redid Clementine and then did a new song. It's very on par with those, kind of a loungy vibe. Just because out of just boredom, really. I just wanted to do something a little gentler, and I did
stretch a little bit.
Yeah, a lot gentler, but very vocal centric, very lyric. Well, all my stuff is lyric first, but these are very kind of bleeding songs, that kind of hopefully kind of wrap around you when you listen to them. So that's what I've got coming out. A little insight into the scenario of what's going on though with the quarantine thing. So what's happening is everyone had to postpone. So what that has done is created an intense bottleneck for like the rest of the year. So when we theoretically are out of this, then everyone that wanted gigs in October and everyone that wanted gigs from, whatever it was, March to May are also wanting those October gigs. So you've got an entire line of work that's just kind of getting pressurized over here and waiting to pop out the other end. And so essentially we're being told things like, if we want to play in November, we have to act now. And so it's a really wacky scenario right now. So it's kind of like, the answer is I don't know exactly this year when I'm going to be, because I'm going to try now for the fall, but it's just things are so bottlenecked that it doesn't mean I'm going to get anything. Because what people don't realize is like they say, when are you going to play, or why didn't you play this place or this place? And what you do is when you do a tour, you basically say, here's all the places I want to play. And it's the market. I've been doing it, like I said, for 11 or 12 years. And in the past, like 5, the market has, it seems, tripled, quadrupled. So like you used to be able to do a full, like say a U.S. tour within, you needed to book it, like 3 months out. Now you need to book it prior to the quarantine situation. You need to book it, 6 to 7 months out.
Yeah.
And then even when you do that, you might be what they call like second or third hold, which means you say, I want that date, but there's 2 other people in front of you. So if those 2 people don't, take it, then you get it. And so it's a complicated thing. But now this has made it very complicated. So that as far as when I'm going to tour, hopefully, slots permitting, when all this is over, but it seems like it will be at best late fall and maybe even first of next year at this point with the way things are going. So I don't know.
Well, at least you have this going for you. As a one-man band, there's no restrictions on rehearsals, whereas, I know the band that I'm in, we've got five people, and we can't get together and haven't been able to for the past, month or so. So, that's the nice thing, that you can just go sit in a room.
Melissa doesn't mind you.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I got to make sure I don't drive her crazy, though, banging on drums.
Yeah. All right, Lincoln Durham, thank you so much for being on the Loadout. You can find Lincoln at lincolndurham.com. You can also find him on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. You're very active, actually, on Instagram especially. I believe you and your wife both kind of operate your account, at least that's the sense I get. But appreciate you being on the Loadout. Reminder to all listeners, you can find us on loadoutmusic.com, on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Loadout Music. And, of course, thanks to our partners at the Gaslight here in St. Louis, as well as at Bro Bible, who are kind enough to publish our measly podcast. So, Lincoln, thanks for being on. Really appreciate it.
Not a problem, man. It's my pleasure. Thank you, guys.